Welcome to the Not Move Fantasy Podcast. We had our week one matchup here, Otis. I barely squeaked by with a small margin. The final score was 137.24 to 135.06. It came down to that epic Sunday night football game. You had Lamar Jackson going. I had Derrick Henry and Dalton Kincaid going. I was sweating this matchup, right? So I just wanted to real quick just go over like the players that we had since it was such a tight matchup. So
Yeah.
I had Bo Nix, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, Dalton Kincaid, George Pickens, the Commanders defense, and Brandon Aubrey. You had Lamar Jackson, Tony Pollard, RJ Harvey, Amon-Ra St. Brown, JSN, Brenton Strange, Cortland Sutton, the Rams D, and Will Lutz. It was a good matchup, man. Like, I was really sweating it, and especially because it got tied there at the end and got real close. I was thinking that maybe you were going to squeak it by with Lamar on me, but luckily Derrick Henry did have that epic game, and Kincaid got into the end zone, so I think that was the only thing that really saved me.
Yeah, I think when I was watching the game, I knew that Derrick Henry is probably going to have a solid game. I didn't expect 100 yards in the second quarter
Right.
type of game, but I knew he was definitely going to be a threat. The Dalton Kincaid obviously was when he got the touchdown, I was thinking, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble unless we can get Lamar Jackson in the end zone again. Probably not going to be, a victory for the open house guys.
And we are in two leagues, so we're going to have head-to-head matches 4 times. So looks like I take the first one, just skated by 2 points. So we have 3 more other matchups. We'll make sure that we review it on each week's episode. I did make a trade in one of the leagues. I made a trade for Malik Neighbors. I had Tyreek Hill, and I traded for Malik Neighbors. I traded with Sage, right? So I liked the trade. I ended up only scoring 12 points with Malik Neighbors because the Giants don't have a great offense. And Tyreek actually only put up 8. So we'll see how that trade pans out. And that's the one thing I'd like to do with you throughout the season is if you make a trade or if you see a trade in your league, let me know what the trade was. And I feel like that'd be like a good thing that we could hit on each week.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about a trade for a guy I've been trying to get ferociously this week when we talk about our waiver wire pickups. But I will say that, the trade you have now seems pretty solid. I thought Tyreek Hill wasn't going to have a good year. He's probably in the middle of those receivers. Malik Neighbors, rookie year, if anything, it proved that he could produce with low budget quarterbacks. Unfortunately, right now, he does have a questionable tag for this week, though.
Oh, yeah, that's the one thing I'm worried about. So that leads me into what I would like to do is I'd like to kind of hit on some of the guys that I saw that was picked up. I'm in 4 leagues, right? So I just kind of want to go over some of the names that got picked up during Waiver Wire Wednesday. Quarterbacks wise, I saw Aaron Rodgers get picked up. I saw Daniel Jones get picked up. I saw Michael Penix. And I also saw Mac Jones. So I'll let you hit on that Mac Jones one.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like this is not the beginning that the 49ers had hoped for with health. They did get the win this week against the Seattle Sea Pigeons. But we came out of that game with a George Kittle hamstring injury. He's now shut down for 4 weeks. We came out of there with, Brock Purdy having a shoulder injury and likely will miss this week and possibly next week. Mac Jones is definitely a guy who I feel like stepped into the role that Sam Darnold had 2 years ago before he was the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. And I feel like he'd be able to manage. I mean, we are playing the Saints, so the idea of having a favorable matchup is certainly in the cards for the 49ers this second week up in the NFL.
Couldn't agree more. A big name at running back that I saw picked up was Dylan Sampson. So that was one of the big names for running back that I saw. Some of the tight ends, I saw Hunter Henry get picked up a lot. Jake Ferguson, Kyle Pitts, Harold Fannin Jr. Those were some of the big tight ends I saw picked up this week. Johnson from the Saints, I saw him get picked up a lot of leagues.
Yeah.
Wide receiver wise, I have a lot longer of a list. So there's
Yeah.
two big names that I thought that stood out on the waiver wire this week. If you were lucky enough to grab them, I feel like the top waiver wire priority was probably Hollywood Brown with the Xavier Worthy injury.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we talk about that offense in general, everyone was expecting the ball to get spread around a lot. Obviously with limited options. Even look at the way that it affects the waiver wire for the real NFL, right? The guy who would probably being brought into that offense would have been Marquez Valdes-Scantling, unfortunately, because the 49ers have so many injuries at wide receiver as well. They brought him in 2 weeks ago, along with Sky Moore, 3 weeks before. So, I think that Hollywood Brown, if you didn't pick him, I luckily was able to pick him in one of the leagues I had. And he wasn't, he was a low pick. He was the round before last, with everybody thinking Worthy and Kelsey were probably going to soak up most of the targets. Yeah. I obviously had no idea that Worthy was going to get injured.
Right, exactly. I had him in one league. He threw a stinker. I actually lost that week, and I was the lowest scoring team that week. So that one really hurt me. I saw like an imperfect lineup. You know how you see those a lot.
Yes.
AJ Brown was on that. Another guy that threw a big stinker for me in that league was Joe Burrow.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have Joe Burrow in a couple of leagues. It didn't quite pan out the way it is, but I'll tell you this, that Cleveland Browns defense isn't anything to be, dismissing right away. I feel like, this is just a slow start, but they got the victory, which is not something that's common in Cincinnati. They were 1-9.
And same with Jamar Chase. Obviously, Jamar Chase was the, overall consensus number one pick, and he got you just over 4 points. So I think everyone's looking to rebound, especially if you had Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on the same team, because that's kind of a cheat code, in my opinion, in fantasy. Well, it should be, right?
Oh, yeah. The league that I drafted Joe Burrow in, I took him in the third round. In one league that I got the first pick, I drafted Jamar Chase, and 2 picks before me, a guy who knew that I was definitely going to pick Joe Burrow, picked him just to kind of, keep me away from that deadly combination.
And another, like a couple more, like of the names that I saw, I want to kind of stick with the Chiefs wide receiver core. I saw Juju get picked up a lot. I saw for the Chargers, I saw Quentin Johnston picked up he was another top waiver wire priority ad. I feel like him and Hollywood were probably the 2 biggest names that were picked up in most leagues this week.
Yeah. I think that, Quentin Johnston had a really solid game. As far as receivers go, I also, put in there Calvin Austin, who, was only owned in 10% of ESPN leagues. He had a big game for the Steelers against the Jets.
Yeah, I saw Thielen picked up a lot. I saw Palmer picked up a lot. Hopkins got picked up in some of my leagues. The other one was Wendell Robinson because we were unsure about the status of Malik Neighbors, right?
Yeah. I think that the idea of having Malik Neighbors as a questionable, if you have him on your roster as a starter, Wandale Robinson is not a guy that isn't too bad to pick up at this point. If you're going to wait till Thursday, Friday to see what happens with Malik Neighbors.
Right. It's a good backup plan to have. I just kind of wanted to, is there any more like waiver wire guys that you really wanted to hit on before I kind of move on to like my, what I would call my picks of the week?
Yeah, absolutely. So at quarterback, we mentioned Daniel Jones. We mentioned Michael Penix, guys who I also like. Justin Fields. Okay. Not a lot of passing yards, but he's going to get your rushing touchdowns apparently in this offense. Tua Tagovailoa only owned in 26% of the leagues. If you're a guy who had Brock Purdy, you're looking to fill that void. That's probably a guy you're looking at. And the last guy, he's at the bottom of the list, but Sam Darnold only owned in 8% of the league. Running backs, we can talk about some guys, but Kenny Gainwell is a guy who got some burn against the Jets as well. Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers, only owned in 7% of the leagues. The guy I really want to talk about, though, that I've been trying to trade for all over my fantasy apps is Bashal Tutin, right?
Oh.
We know that Tank Bigsby has been traded to the Eagles. The Eagles put out a press release that they like him for his return ability. I don't know how much that's going to play into his ability in the backfield with A.J. Dillon already there as the backup. But Bashal Tutin is a guy who I watched grow up. I actually coached against him in high school. He's from New Jersey. He's a talented guy, and I really like his upside. If you're a team or a fantasy owner who is in a league that is fantasy or dynasty or keeper, you could possibly be looking at Bashal Tutin as the next starter in Jacksonville. And another guy I like is Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. We talked about receivers. I said Calvin Austin, but there's Josh Palmer from the Buffalo Bills as a guy who's only owned in 13% of ESPN leagues, as well as Romeo Doubs, who is, caught a couple balls, long balls for the Packers, right? Only owned in 20% of leagues. And then obviously with the injury to Xavier Worthy, right? We talked about Hollywood Brown, but also Juju Smith-Schuster is another guy you could look at. At tight end, Hunter Henry, you said, was being picked up. He's now owned in 52%. Prior to this week, only owned in 20% of the leagues. Jawan Johnson, you also mentioned, now 30%. And here's a guy I really like also, who's on a team that has a lot of target sharing going on, but didn't quite get the spread that we thought. And that's Noah Fant of the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Gesicki is the guy there. We know that, but Noah Fant had a pretty solid game as a tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we also talked about Harold Fenton Jr., only owned in 18% of the leagues.
All right. So I want to do my starts of the week. The 4 most favorable matchups. I just picked 4 names for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. I didn't really do kickers. I mean, I could have done kickers, but I feel like they're a plug and play each week. I don't really value kickers super high, so I didn't really make a top 4 for kickers. But let me know what you think about my, starts of the week, and you can let me know if you have anything different.
Yeah, before you get started, I just want to say about kickers.
Yeah.
You know as well as I do, I've been praying for this day for 3 years. The 49ers finally released Jake Moody. I can't stress that enough. I am so happy as a 49ers fan that this guy who was a 3rd-round pick, okay, and I just looked at some of the names after we picked him that definitely could have started and played on our team. That's probably the only mistake that John Lynch has made. But moving on, let's get to your picks of the week.
All right, so my start of the week at quarterback, my number 1 start of the week is a guy I have in one league, and that's Justin Herbert versus the Rams. I feel like Justin Herbert played great against, obviously, the Chiefs last week, and I think Justin Herbert is going to be the top scoring quarterback in the league this week. I love the matchup against the Raiders. I think Justin Herbert is here. And I think he is going to be very valuable in fantasy. The next start of the week is kind of a shocker maybe to some people, but I feel like Kyler Murray versus Carolina is going to be a good start this week. I think Kyler could put up good points. We saw that Carolina D wasn't too stout. The other guy I like a lot was a guy that you hit on earlier, and that was Justin Fields against Buffalo, right? Now, I'm a little weary about that because of the Buffalo defense, but Justin Fields looked good, right?
I mean, when you talk about rushing offense, right, look at the output that you saw the Ravens have against the Buffalo Bills. And that offensive line in Baltimore is, not exactly a unit that we said at the beginning of the year. hello, they're going to run for a bunch of yards because of these offensive linemen. These are new guys, right? They just brought in new guys this year. There's 3 of the 5 are new starters, and they still had a solid output rushing the ball. I mean, Derrick Henry almost 200 yards, Lamar Jackson over 50.
Now, my number 4 spot is going to go to Dak Prescott against the Giants. I feel like Dak is going to ball out this week. If you have Justin Herbert, you probably have him on your team. If you have Dak, you probably drafted him. But I feel like if you didn't draft Justin Fields or Kyler Murray and you want to plug in a different quarterback, like you said, with the recent injury to, Brock Purdy, I feel like Kyler Murray and Justin Fields would be 2 good guys to plug in here at that quarterback spot.
Yeah, I like their versatility against these defenses specifically. Kyler Murray, not a big output all the time, but he does have his spots where he rushes for a touchdown, rushes for over 50 yards, and throws for over 175. So not bad there for the plug and play.
All righty. I want to go over, I think I'll do running backs next, right? My start of the week this week is going to be James Conner. I think James Conner is going to have a big game this week. He's going up against the Panthers. Again, like I said, I'm playing the matchup. That's why I have Kyler Murray up there. I'm going to put James Conner here too. Carolina's defense not very good. James Conner got that little toss touchdown this last week, and I feel like James Conner is going to be my start of the week at running back. Now, the next name I have is going to be Travis Etienne, right? So I wasn't high on this guy. I avoided this guy in drafts, but I like Travis Etienne versus that Bengals defense. Again, I'm playing the matchups. I think the Bengals have a very suspect defense, and I feel like Travis Etienne can run all over that Bengals defense. So the number 2 spot I have going to Travis Etienne. Number 3 spot I have is Jahmyr Gibbs this week. I have Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be eating against that Bears, right? Eating against that Chicago Bears defense. Chicago didn't play that bad. They kind of fell apart at the end of the game on Monday night. But I feel like Jahmyr Gibbs, this is why he was drafted high, and I feel like this is why he could have a huge game. Last name I have is Chuba Hubbard. I feel like Chuba Hubbard can have a big week this week as well. He plays the Cardinals. So, again, the Cardinals defense is nothing scary. I'm playing the matchups. So, yeah, James Conner, Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Chuba Hubbard. What do you think of those 4 names?
Yeah. So, James Conner, James Conner. I think he's one of the most underrated running backs in fantasy football this year. And this guy does nothing but have 1,000-yard seasons.
Right.
So I like the matchup against the Panthers. I'm a little bit leery about this Jahmyr Gibbs, and I had Jahmyr Gibbs in a keeper league. Just because that offense did not look very good against the Green Bay defense. And I know the Green Bay defense is obviously climbing as far as rankings go with the addition of Micah Parsons, but I'm just a little bit leery about Jahmyr Gibbs. Travis Etienne, like I said, I feel like he's at the twilight of his career. Bashaw Tutin will be coming in and getting more goal line carries, excuse me, this season. And he was inside the 10. He had 8 carries last week. So Travis Etienne probably going to get more burn because of the Bigsby trade, but look out for Bashaw Tutin on his heels.
Yep, that was another reason I kind of leaned that way. All right, wide receivers. My start of the week is guy we hit on earlier, Hollywood Brown. He is going to be a target machine. If you've snagged him already on the waiver wire because it's waiver wire Wednesday, or like you did and you drafted him, this is a perfect opportunity to use him. This is my must start of the week is Hollywood Brown. Do not bench Hollywood Brown this week, in my opinion. I like the matchup, and I think he is going to eat against that Eagles secondary because that Eagles secondary looked very suspect against Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I mean Jacorian Bennett and Quentin Michael, or excuse me, Quentin. What's his name?
Quinshawn, isn't it Quinshawn Mitchell? I
forget. Mitchell, yeah. Right. So this guy is a slot guy, but you have 2 guys on the outside. You don't know who they are. Okay. Jacorian Bennett came in and Adoree Jackson. Both of those guys looked absolutely suspect. They looked lost in the defense. Obviously the big impact that we saw with that Thursday night game, was the Jalen Carter, ejection. I think that those guys might play better if Jalen Carter's in the game, but they did not look like they knew what they were doing or comfortable in that defensive backfield.
All right, number 2 on my wide receiver list this week is going to be A.J. Brown. I feel like he bounces back, right? Disappointing week in week 1, but he's facing a really good matchup against that suspect Kansas City defense. Again, Justin Herbert picked apart that Kansas City defense, and I feel like it's either going to be A.J. Brown or, it could be Schmitty, but I'm going to go with A.J. Brown as my number 2 spot for start of the week.
Yeah, I like the bounce back here. I feel like there's going to be a shootout at this Kansas City-Philadelphia game. By the way, it's Quinyon Mitchell. I apologize to Quinyon Mitchell. But I feel like A.J. Brown, this was just a game where, Jalen Hurts took it over with his feet most of the game, and Saquon Barkley.
So next guy I feel like is a must start this week at the number 3 spot. I got Emeka Egbuka. I feel like after the performance you saw in week 1, I know you shouldn't chase points in fantasy, but at this point, what I saw out of week 1, Emeka Egbuka is a must start against the Texans defense this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Southgate in the NFP family. He told everybody this guy was going to cook, and he was not wrong. And Emeka Egbuka did not disappoint.
Yeah, if he would have just only started him over DeMonta Smith against me, he would have had more points against me. Again, I'm kind of appreciate that he didn't start him against me, and he was probably pretty upset when he saw him sitting on the bench. Last name I have is another guy we hit on was a waiver wire ad, and I like Quentin Johnston this week against the Raiders. He's in my number 4 spot.
Yeah, I think the Raiders defense solid up front in that front 6, front 5. Or front 7 of the Raiders, but I just feel like the back end is a little shaky. And I feel like that's a solid matchup. Justin Herbert is going to have a great season. Even though Harbaugh likes to run the football, his play action pass is deadly. And Justin Herbert is a guy who can deliver for them. A guy I also like you could take a flyer on if you have not gotten him in your leagues is Kevontae Turpin from the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
I really feel like Kevontae Turpin is a guy who they intentionally use in that kind of Deebo Samuel-esque role for that offense. They've kind of built him in as sub package of their offense, and on top of that, he is also their punt returner and kickoff returner. So you could be getting double points based on your usage of the Dallas Cowboys defense.
Yep. Another name so I'm going to move along to the tight ends position. I actually did 3 instead of 4 this week. I like Tyler Warren. I have him in 1 league. I like the matchup against the Broncos. I feel like Tyler Warren is going to be, we saw that kind of, that safety valve for Tyler Warren last week against Miami for Danny Dimes. Tyler Warren is my start of the week against my own Broncos.
Yeah, I like Tyler Warren out of the draft. I thought he was the most talented guy. I know Colston Loveland went higher, but at the end of the day, I think Tyler Warren, when we look back in about 6-7 years, I think he's going to be the guy that we look to and say, okay, he won the draft in this class.
Right, exactly. Another big name that I like this week is Jake Ferguson, the tight end for the Cowboys. I like the matchup against the Giants. Giants got exposed a little bit in the tight end position last week. I like Jake Ferguson this week. He comes in at my number 2 spot.
Yeah, Jake Ferguson, a big target. I have him in a couple leagues. If you didn't start him because you had a guy like Travis Kelce or George Kittle or any of those guys, in the top 4, Laporta, and even Trey McBride. I think he's a solid pick here to start this week. I just feel like that offense is going to just get even better.
Right. Another big name I like this week I picked him up in a lot of leagues because I waited on tight ends like I told you, and I kind of am plugging and playing. It was another big name that I liked was Hunter Henry. I like Hunter Henry against the Dolphins this week. Obviously, I'm playing the matchup again, and Hunter Henry had a big week last week against the Raiders. So Hunter Henry comes in at my number 3 spot against the Dolphins.
Yeah, as I said to you, very popular pickup on the waiver wire. Was previously, about 30-ish% owned.
Right. Right.
And then after the waiver wire has now jumped up to 52%
Right.
in this week's rankings.
All right. So that covers my tight ends. Any other tight ends you want to throw in there before I move on to defense?
Well, we already talked about. I really like Harold Fannin Jr.
Yeah.
Lot of targets. He got a lot of targets. 9 targets last week, 5 catches. So I like Harold Fannin Jr. If you haven't gotten him off the waiver wire, pick him up now.
All righty. So my start of the week for defense is going to be your guys' squad. It's going to be the 49ers. That's my start of the week. I feel like the Niners are going to have the best defensive outing this week. You got a great matchup against the Saints, right? And even though the Saints played pretty decent last week, I still like the 49ers defense this week. So my start of the week is the 49ers at the Saints.
Yeah, I love the 49ers this week. I also like the Cowboys against the Giants. That's a matchup that you're just going to continue to exploit, right? You talked earlier about the ability of Kyler Murray and James Conner. Yeah, I like the defense of the Cardinals as well against those Carolina Panthers. And the last team, some people avoided was the Rams. And if you can get the Rams, they're playing Tennessee, rookie quarterback, offensive output not that great last week against your Broncos. Yeah. I don't see it changing for the foreseeable future. It's going to take 6-7 weeks for Cameron Ward to get ready and able to compete in the NFL.
Yeah, I have the Rams as my number 2 defense. And I'm not trying to be a homer here, but the number 3 pick is a reason why you went early on a defense, and that's my Denver Broncos. They have the Colts. They're traveling. They're on the road against the Colts. But the Denver Broncos defense played good. They had 6 sacks last week, right? So as long as the Broncos can stop the run, I still feel like they're going to get to Danny Dimes. I still like the matchup this week for the Broncos. I have them at my number 3 spot.
Yeah, I feel like if the defense can get after it, get some 3 and outs early on, and make this game, out of touch for the Colts, using their run game and Bo Nix passing the ball, I feel like that is a solid pick, not only because of the inability, most likely, by that offense to really kind of cook. If they can stop the run against Jonathan Taylor, they're going to be dangerous throughout the entire second half.
I also like the Vikings versus the Falcons this week. And that's my number 4 spot.
Yeah, Vikings, a solid outing against the Bears on Monday Night Football. Didn't look so good in the beginning.
Right.
Came on at the end. The defense played well at the end as well. So I feel like there's a lot of, kind of sorting out, feeling out processes going on with these offenses and these defenses as well. And I feel like you're going to see some of the younger teams that are drafting defensive players or offensive players as the season goes on. You're going to see a lot of improvement over the course of the season.
All right, and my last spot is a team that I'm taking a flyer on this week, and I think that I'm taking a limb here. I'm going out on a limb here, but I like the Chargers versus the Raiders. I picked up the Chargers in a lot of leagues this week, and I feel like they're going to have a good outing against the Raiders, especially if Brock Bowers can't go.
Yeah, if Brock Bowers can't go, that offense changes a lot. You're looking at relying on Jacoby Myers and Geno Smith, and a lot of that offense, grinding game against the Chargers, who are going to put up points. They really are. I mean, we saw them put up points against the Chiefs this past week. So I don't feel like that's a terrible pick.
All righty, Otis. That was pretty much all my starts of the week. Anything else from you before we end this week?
No, I can't stress enough that if you're not gone after Harold Fannin Jr., if you're not going after Bashal Tutin, get on it right now if he's still available in your leagues. Loved both of those pickups.
All right, Otis. Enjoy talking ball with you every week. See how this all plays out. Let's see how our predictions panned out. That'll be nice to recap what we said this week. So good luck in all your leagues, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for tuning into the Not Move Podcast Fantasy Football, where stats become stories.